Prince Hamlet arrives at Act 3, Scene 1 at a crossroads of philosophical doubt. His mind is a collision of complex equations and existential questioning, creating a weight of intellectual depth that makes physical action nearly impossible to justify. This specific moment serves as the epicenter of his crisis. When he begins the to be or not to be soliloquy, his internal landscape is physically constrained within a literal environment of surveillance. Shakespeare's stage directions place King Claudius and Polonius behind an arras, a heavy tapestry, to observe Hamlet's encounter with Ophelia from a position of total concealment. Power in this physical space is dictated by the geometry of the room. Authority belongs to those who see without being seen, while vulnerability tracks the figure at the center of the crosshairs. Hamlet enters this space as a victim of peeping. He is unaware that his private internal landscape is being harvested as political data by the men behind the curtain. The scene functions as a spatial puzzle where the physical act of observation serves as the catalyst for the breakdown of Hamlet's agency. Translating this scene to film requires a visual strategy that either traps Hamlet within the frame or uses the camera to empower him. Laurence Olivier's 1948 adaptation portrays Hamlet as an ineffectual gazer. His eyes reflect a pensive state, where the act of thinking itself becomes a hindrance to action. Kenneth Branagh's 1996 adaptation reimagines the character as a clairvoyant executor, where a modern, focused intellect fuels his resolution rather than depleting it. The placement of the camera in the visual hierarchy redefines the very source of Hamlet's tragedy. These versions represent the spectrum of interpretation, moving from a story of personal paralysis to a systemic existential predicament. The soliloquy builds upon a foundation of existential philosophy, where to be represents the conscious burden of existence, and not to be represents the silence of non-existence. Hamlet weighs the tension between stoic endurance, suffering the slings and arrows of fortune, and active revolt, taking arms against a sea of troubles. The logic of death as a peaceful sleep collapses the moment Hamlet introduces the possibility of dreaming, which brings a new layer of chaotic uncertainty. The undiscovered country marks an epistemological limit, a territory that cannot be explored, where human knowledge ends and metaphysical anxiety begins. This fear connects directly to his inaction. Acute awareness, or conscience, turns the heat of resolution into a pale cast of thought. Hamlet's tragedy is rooted in this excessive awareness, where philosophical depth creates a state of moral and physical paralysis. Olivier changes the hierarchy of sight by having Hamlet eavesdrop on the spies first, attempting to flip the power dynamic of the scene. Hamlet exerts a gaze back on his observers, searching the room and trying to establish dominance over the space. This dominance is purely internal. Because he cannot see through the tapestry, the arras effectively becomes a mirror, trapping Hamlet's focus within his own mind. In Scene 1, he points an imaginary sword, his finger, at the curtain. This contrasts with Scene 4, where he instinctively thrusts a real blade through the fabric, showing a sudden return to the physical world. Olivier's Hamlet is the romantic archetype, a man who procrastinates due to intellectual activity and loses the power of action in the energy of his resolve. In this visual hierarchy, intellectual indulgence is the very thing that traps the prince in a state of being seen without the agency to act. Brana replaces the medieval arras with a modern palace gallery of one-way mirrors. A double structure of sight defines this environment. One side of the mirror offers a reflection to the subject, while the other allows for covert surveillance from the hidden side. Hamlet catches Ophelia's fleeting glance toward the glass, transforming his status from an unwitting subject into a formidable opponent. Through superimposition, the camera intercuts Hamlet's face with Claudius's reflection, suggesting that Hamlet's sight is physically penetrating the glass. Brana externalizes the monologue, delivering it as a direct threat aimed at the hidden king. Thought in this version acts as a clairvoyant engine. It provokes action and reinforces Hamlet's resolution, rather than paralyzing it. These two models present divergent views of the play. Olivier's tragedy centers on an individual defect, while Branagh's depicts a heroic representative of humanity destroyed by systemic fate. The engine behind these interpretations lies in the direction of the sightlines. Olivier's vectors curve inward toward the self, while branas pierce outward toward the target. The soliloquy operates as a live variable, shifting its fundamental meaning based on the physical and visual environment of the performance. In the world of Hamlet, sight is fate, and the act of observation defines the limits of what it means to be.